Between 1953 and 1973, the CIA secretly experimented with psychoactive substances on American citizens, leading to public apologies. Let's dive into the controversial projects that shocked the nation. Number 8. Project MK Ultra, the quest for mind control. Imagine waking up one day and discovering that, for 20 years, your government had been experimenting on you as if you were a lab rat. That's exactly what happened with MK Ultra. This project began in 1953 and was halted in 1973 using numerous methods to manipulate the mental states of its subjects, including the covert administration of high doses of psychoactive substances, especially hallucinogenic compounds, without the subject's informed consent. The CIA conducted hundreds of secret research projects, sometimes on unsuspecting U.S. citizens, to evaluate the potential use of these substances and other techniques for mind control, information extraction, and psychological manipulation. Think of it like this. It's as if Netflix were testing new algorithms on your brain, but instead of recommending shows, they were trying to control your thoughts. Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, known as the chief chemist, led these research projects. He genuinely believed he could create specialized agents by altering perception with hallucinogenic substances. The reality turned out to be far more controversial. But if you think giving controlled substances to random people was controversial enough, wait until you hear about the safe houses. Number 7. Operation Midnight Climax, surveillance houses with hidden cameras. This operation sounds like something out of a B-grade spy movie, but it was completely real. Operation Midnight Climax was established to study the effects of psychoactive substances on individuals who had not given their informed consent. The projects involved luring men to establishments under covert surveillance, administering hallucinogenic compounds to them, and filming their reactions to probing questions and subliminal messages. Imagine the scene. A normal citizen goes to what he thinks is a social encounter, but is actually entering a CIA research facility disguised as a commercial establishment. In a strange Cold War program, the CIA used undercover operatives to lure test subjects only to administer consciousness-altering substances to them. All of this was designed to achieve mind control. Agents observed from behind one-way mirrors, taking notes on how victims reacted under the influence of potent substances. It was like the Truman Show, but with hallucinogenic compounds and without Truman's consent. By the time the program was canceled in 1963, the project had lost all scientific control. Number 6. The case of Wayne Ritchie. When experiments ruin lives, this story will make your hair stand on end. Wayne Ritchie, a United States deputy marshal, unknowingly consumed a drink contaminated with a psychoactive substance at a Christmas party. Under the effects of the substance, he attempted to rob a bar at gunpoint. He resigned from the marshal service, but avoided jail. Think about it. A respectable law officer, a guy who dedicated his life to maintaining order, suddenly becomes a criminal because someone decided it would be interesting to see what happens if they administer a hallucinogenic compound in his Christmas drink. Wayne never knew why he had done something so out of character until decades later. His career was ruined, his reputation was destroyed, and his life changed forever, all because he was the involuntary victim of a government experiment. It's like waking up tomorrow and discovering that all your worst moments were caused by something someone else did to you without you knowing. Cases like Wayne's were not isolated. There were hundreds of people who didn't even know they had been part of these research programs. Number 5. Prisoners and patients, the perfect targets. Prisoners, terminal cancer patients, and American soldiers were administered controlled substances without informed consent. Why these groups? Simple. They were vulnerable and had no power to complain. Prisoners were perfect because they were already locked up. Researchers offered them small privileges in exchange for participating in medical studies, but never told them they were going to be given experimental compounds that could affect their cognitive function. It was like signing a contract without reading the fine print, except the fine print said, "We might destroy your sanity." Terminal patients were even more tragic. These people were already fighting for their lives, and instead of receiving compassionate care, they became guinea pigs. Imagine dying of cancer and your last gift being to serve as an experiment for the CIA to learn to control minds. Soldiers, on the other hand, believed they were serving their country in a different way. They didn't know that their own commanders were using them as test material. Number 4. Experiments in bars and restaurants. Your cocktail could be drugged. This part is really going to make you paranoid. CIA operatives began drugging people with acid in restaurants, bars, and beaches. CIA agents administered LSD to other citizens they met in bars and other places. Agents invited citizens to safe houses in San Francisco and New York where they administered drugs without consent. Imagine this. You go out with your friends for a few beers after work. A friendly guy approaches, buys a round, and suddenly your night turns into the worst nightmare of your life. Not because you drank too much, but because a government agent decided you'd be a good test subject. They also used other more exotic drugs. If we were so afraid of a drug that we didn't want to test it on ourselves, we sent it to San Francisco, said a former CIA officer. It was like chemical Russian roulette. Any public place could become an instant laboratory. Your waiter, the nice guy at the bar, even your date, could be agents testing how well their new hallucinogenic compounds worked. Number 3, the CIA experimented on itself when scientists were the rats. This is where things get really crazy. The agency generally drugged individual targets, finding volunteers when they could, sometimes putting the drug in the drinks of fellow CIA employees. Yes, you read that right. They were drugging their own colleagues. Imagine going to the year-end office party and having your boss put LSD in your drink as an experiment. It's like the worst work team in history. Hey, did you see Johnson's reports? No, he's in the bathroom having hallucinations because we put acid in his coffee this morning. Morphine, mescaline, and LSD were administered to CIA agents without their knowledge in an attempt to produce amnesia in the subjects. It was a work culture so toxic that it was literally toxic. The scientists justified this by saying they needed to understand the effects before using them on the enemy. But the reality is, they created an environment where no one could trust anyone. Your coworker could be your next experimenter. Number 2. Unexpected connections. How the CIA created hippie culture. Get ready for this cosmic irony. Ken Kesey, the author of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, got his LSD in a CIA-sponsored experiment by MKUltra by Sidney Gottlieb. Also, Robert Hunter, the lyricist for Grateful Dead, who went on to become a major spreader of LSD culture. Do you realize how ironic this is? The CIA was trying to use LSD to create obedient super soldiers and mind control, but accidentally created the counterculture movement that opposed everything the government represented. It's like trying to make a potion to make people obey and instead ending up creating one that makes them question all authority. Ken Kesey came out of those experiments and wrote one of the most anti-establishment novels in history. Grateful Dead became the symbol of psychedelic rebellion. The CIA basically funded its own opposition. They wanted obedient zombies and ended up creating rebellious hippies. It's the perfect definition of the shot backfired. Number 1. The cover-up and the truth. When everything collapsed. In 1975, this entire house of cards came crashing down. The Church Committee, which investigated CIA research, concluded that prior consent obviously was not obtained from any of the subjects. This program exposed numerous individuals in the United States to the risk of death or serious injury without their informed consent, without medical supervision. When the documents finally became public, the magnitude of these experiments left the entire nation shocked. Thousands of pages revealed decades of experiments on American citizens. It was like discovering that your family doctor had been poisoning you for 20 years for science. The CIA had to publicly admit that it had violated the fundamental rights of its own citizens. Entire families discovered that their loved ones had been victims of experiments that should never have happened. Officials recommended ending substance testing on unsuspecting American citizens after weighing the possible benefits of such testing against the risk of compromise and resulting damage to the CIA. Note that their main concern was damage to the CIA, not to the victims. And here's what should really make you think. These are just the experiments we know about, the documents that weren't destroyed. In 1973, the CIA director ordered all MKUltra files destroyed. What you just heard are only the fragments that survived. So the next time someone tells you that you shouldn't distrust the government because they would never do something like that, remind them that they already did for 20 years to their own citizens. And the only reason we know is because some documents escaped the shredder. What other experiments remain secret? That's a question we may never have the courage to answer. If this video blew your mind as much as the CIA blew minds in the 60s, give it a like and subscribe for more disturbing truths they prefer to keep you ignoring. See you in the next Timeline Sketches.